Hi, I'm Kaitlyn, an attorney with Murray Osorio, and today I'm going to explain the I-730 process. For those of you that don't know, the I-730 is the asylee follow to join petition. So when a person is granted asylum and their loved ones are back in their home country or in the US but without status, that person can file an I-730. The specific requirements for filing an I-730 are that the petitioner, the person who files the form, has to be someone who was recently granted asylum. We're going to talk about this just in the context of asylum today and not refugee status. So, someone who was granted asylum within the past 2 years can file Form I-730 for their spouse or their unmarried children under age 21. And just to know, the age 21 refers to the age of your kids when you filed your asylum application. So I know a lot of people have waited 6, 7, 8 years for their asylum to get granted, and their kids are now obviously 8 years older than when they filed. But the age of your kid when you filed your Form I-589 is frozen for the purposes of the I-730. You should also note that in some specific instances, you may be able to file Form I-730 for your legally adopted kids or your stepchildren. So this is a little bit too complicated for this short video that we're going to do today, but if you have adopted or stepchildren, it's worth speaking to a lawyer about whether or not those children may be eligible to benefit from an I-730. And so the process of filing an I-730 and getting it approved varies slightly depending on whether your loved ones, the beneficiaries of the petition, are in the United States or whether they are abroad. So I'm going to slowly go through the processing steps of the I-730 with you. Let's break them down into 4 steps. So step 1 is that you, the petitioner, the person who has been granted asylum within the past 2 years, you submit the forms and the supporting evidence to USCIS. Then you will receive your receipt notice. After that, USCIS will process your Form I-730. So as of October 2023, when I'm making this video, USCIS is listing the processing times for Form I-730 at 30 months. So that means that approximately 80% of cases are adjudicated within 30 months. So gear up for a long wait on the I-730 petitions. After USCIS approves your I-730, then they'll send it to the appropriate government office. Obviously, if USCIS denies your Form I-730, then that's a different story that isn't going to fit into this video. But let's assume that your I-730 gets approved. If your loved one, the beneficiary, is inside the USA, then USCIS is going to forward the approved petition to the next appropriate office, which is going to most likely be the USCIS field office near where your relative lives. That person may be interviewed at that field office, and then you'll get an approval or a denial. If your beneficiary is outside the USA, then USCIS takes the petition and forwards it through the National Visa Center to the embassy or the consulate near where your loved one lives. If your person is located abroad, there are some extra steps that they'll need to go through, such as getting a medical exam and preparing for a consular interview. Then they'll attend an interview at the consulate. If the consulate approves, then your loved one will be issued a boarding foil in their passport and they'll be able to come to the United States. After the beneficiary, your loved one, has been in the United States after being granted asylee follow to join status through the I-730, they can apply for a green card after 1 year. So that's the entire process. Keep in mind, it's a lengthy process, but that's how the I-730 works. You probably heard me mention several times that the petitioner has to be someone who has been granted asylum in the past 2 years. This is really important. If you miss this 2-year window, you can ask USCIS to still adjudicate the petitions and to grant you an exception for failing to have filed in that 2-year window. The exception is based on humanitarian circumstances. So if it's already happened, then I recommend you speak to a lawyer and see if you might be eligible for that exception. If you're still within that window, definitely do your best to get the I-730s filed as quickly as possible after being granted asylum. And that avoids you needing to ask for any type of exception. Another important thing to know is that a person can't file Form I-730 after they've applied to naturalize. So you want to make sure that your I-730s are filed, ideally approved, before you move on to applying for naturalization to get your citizenship in the United States. Again, if this has already happened, I recommend speaking with a lawyer. If you are already a citizen and you never filed the Form I-730, you may be able to file a different type of petition called an I-130 for certain loved ones. If you filed the I-730 while you were still an asylee or while you were a permanent resident, and it was just taking forever to adjudicate and you naturalized in the meantime, there may be an exception for that. But for those, you need to be chatting with a lawyer. So hopefully this overview of the I-730 process was helpful to you. If you would like to speak to me or another lawyer on our team about the I-730 process or any other immigration process, feel free to call or email our office. And if you mention that you found us on YouTube, we will grant you 50% off of our regular consultation fee. Thanks for joining me today.